Nancy Wise, Commissioner.
But you-
Malone, Commissioner.
Rachel McEnany, County Administrator.
Rick Krager, Assistant County Administrator.
From Ketchum, planner with Campo and planner at Aquacog as well, Oregon Cascades West Council of Governments.
Billy McGregor with the same Cascades West Council of Governments, and I am the Albany area MPO planner.
Gary Stockoff, Public Works.
And in the room,
Hi, Jacqueline Disney, CED Director with the Oregon Cascade West Coast.
welcome.
Hi, my name is Ashley Mashinko. I'm an administrative assistant with Oregon Cascades.
Thank you.
More by House Board of Commissioners. And Twigs, Board of Commissioners, PIO.
Thank you. And online,
Justin Marshall, Bowman County Sheriff.
morning, Sheriff. Anyone else online? Okay, with that, we will take a look at the agenda. Are there any changes or adjustments to be made to the agenda this morning?
Can I ask a question though, which our camera looks like it's pointing at the wall? I wonder if. I apologize.
Good catch. Okie dokie, then we will consider the agenda approved and we will move on to the consent calendar. Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
I actually probably jumped to that a little too soon. There are a couple of minor editorial changes in terms of name spelling and one incomplete sentence that I would like to address in the April 11th meeting minutes, and I will do that with Erica afterwards. So.
So I move to approve the consent calendar with the changes to the minutes that Commissioner Monroe will discuss with Erica.
Yes, they're minor wording, spelling changes and one sentence fragment.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please indicate with an eye.
Aye.
Aye. Moving on, the first item of business is to have our guests speak to the proposed merger of Albany Area Metropolitan Planning Area and the Corvallis Area Metropolitan Planning Area, AMPO and Campo. Joined by Gary Stockoff, our Public Works Director.
I'm going to turn it right over to really inform to go that we do have a brief PowerPoint. They'll go through with you and kind of give some of the high points and just kind of lead the discussion on where you're all set with it. So I know Commissioner Malone has been at all the meetings to hear this. So.
All right, well, thank you, Gary. Good morning, Benton County Commissioners. My name is Billy McGregor, and I am the lead transportation planner for the Albany Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. I'm here today to share the story of Albany and Corvallis's parallel paths and the potential for our merging. I'm joined today by Coram Ketchum with the Corvallis Area MPO. And as we present, we ask that you hold your questions until the end, at which point we will answer any questions. We will also be recording your feedback as part of our public outreach process. Alrighty, the Albany Area MPO was designated by Governor John Kitzhaber on February 6, 2013, as required by federal regulations based on the 2010 census, which identified the greater Albany area as an urbanized area, including the cities of Albany, Jefferson, Millersburg, and Tangent, with a portion of Benton and Lynn counties. The regulations require MPOs to conduct a continuing, cooperative, and comprehensive transportation planning process with a regional focus. All right, when formed, there was a question about whether AMPO should simply join CAMPO. At the time, there was no support for this idea based on the political environment. As time passed, the issue arose again in 2019, 2020, where a joint policy board meeting was held in January 2020 to review the costs and benefits of merging. During that time, several concerns led to tabling the conversation, but with directing staff to explore opportunities to coordinate without merging. In 2023, coordination was restructured as collaboration between CAMPO and AMPO. And by this point, our two MPOs have shared many forms and processes. This natural progression has now led to shared work products, notably the recently approved Joint Title VI plan and our upcoming public participation plan. Seeing this willingness to collaborate between the MPOs, staff asked what the next step would look like, and that returned us to the topic of merger. Staff presented to their policy boards in September 2023 the idea of beginning the merger process, which on average takes agencies about 3 years to accomplish. And staff was directed to proceed. Fast forward to today, we've had a lot of conversations about the merger, and we're here today presenting to our communities at large to hear their thoughts. All right, so the big question we've asked at the beginning of this exercise is, can we merge? And the answer remains yes. Realistically, looking back, if Oregon in 1973 hadn't ratified urban growth boundaries, it's very likely that the two urbanized areas of Albany and Corvallis would have already merged and been a single MPO formed much sooner than 2003 and 2013. Though federal regulation is flip-flopped on the subject of whether MPOs should be forced to merge, 27 saw the removal of unpopular requirements for forced merger. Currently, federal policy mostly encourages merger and attempts to streamline the process. But as an MPO, we are not exactly sure how it encourages streamlining the process. It's not well understood. The process of merging is, as we can tell, basically essentially the same as forming a new MPO. Our MPOs are not required to merge, and if a merger was finalized and later found to be undesirable, it could be undone via the same process as merging, which is to simply break up and form two new MPOs. When researching examples of other MPOs merging, and there's not a lot, staff found similar examples where two distinct urban areas were represented by a single MPO. It is somewhat easier in the procedure if MPOs share an existing boundary, but this is not a requirement, and we would merely have to redraw a combined MPO boundary. Distance-wise, Albany and Corvallis are only separated by 2.5 miles from their borders, in North Albany to Adair Village, which is part of the Corvallis MPO, and roughly 4 miles along Route 20. All right, as mentioned, there were unresolved concerns during the 2020 merger conversation that led to a decision to coordinate but remain separate. Going into the 2023 merger conversation, staff was able to answer some of these questions and find answers to the others. It was determined by staff with help from ODOT's Eric Havig, who also oversaw the formation of the Albany area MPO, that the total MPO administrative staffing funds would decrease by about 7% from the merger. However, the Corvallis area MPO will be losing additional funds from the 2020 census planning level funding redistribution, resulting in a combined loss of about 15%. Most importantly to our partner jurisdictions, based on the 2020 conversation, was whether or not they would lose funding to their community programs. And we found that our local state highway funds will not change because of the merger, since they are based on population. Our transit funding dollars will also remain the same, as they are determined by the census-based urbanized area. The last concern was that of representation or overrepresentation, to be addressed on our next slide. So on screen, you can see the rough breakdown with Corvallis on the left and Albany on the right. And there is some overlap with ODOT and Benton County. In 2020, communities were concerned from various standpoints about how a merger would reshape the political balance within the MPOs. This matter is always an important consideration, especially for limited project funds. Staff understand the importance of this, and as we participate in many regional bodies, including the area commissions on transportation. Our region on both sides has previously reviewed weighted member voting and reject it unanimously. We do not foresee that there should be an upset in our current voting balance as long as the one vote per member system is maintained. Moving on. Through conversations with ODOT staff, we've determined that during the centennial funding cycle, both MPOs are expected to lose some amount of funding compared to the last 10-year cycle. Corvallis having a slower population growth and losing a point of complexity with the funding formula redistribution is expected to take an approximately $35,000 cut to their MPO. Albany is likely to lose about 3,000, but this number fluctuates. Newer estimates suggest that both of these amounts might be less. We will have to wait and see where ODOT settles with these figures as well. Recently announced last Friday on October the 4th, the MPOs can expect to lose state match of federal funds, which could signify a potential 10% additional loss by fiscal year 27. So that's pretty new. Due to the way in which these funds are distributed based on state formula, if we merge, the MPOs would lose the equivalent of an additional complexity point, which drops us down another 30,000, give or take. Discussions with the state and other MPOs lead staff to conclude that this loss is kind of an unavoidable downside of merging. We've tried to noodle it out with our state partners and our other MPO partners during the PL fund distribution formula discussions, and there's not a lot of ways around it. So what are MPOs responsible for? MPO staff at both agencies are responsible for creating and maintaining the following documents, and combining these is where staff expects to see our administrative efficiency savings. First up is the Unified Planning Work Program, or UPWP. It outlines the transportation planning and programming activities of the MPO for the fiscal year. The UPWP serves as the MPO's annual work plan containing major work tasks and many specific subtasks, and it allocates staff time and funding for each activity. It's written every year and requires several reports annually to maintain compliance, so we would decrease that by half. Next big document is our Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP. It is a 20-year long-range transportation plan that's updated every 5 years. It addresses all modes of transportation and establishes transportation policy and project priorities for our regions. It can be used as a supporting document by localities for grant applications, and it is a federally recognized and required planning document. The third big one is the Transportation Improvement Plan, or TIP, TIP. It's a short-range capital improvement program that enumerates priority transportation projects within the MPOs for funding. The TIP encompasses a period of 3 fiscal years and is updated every 2 years. It's where ODOT houses all of its project funds for a lot of transportation construction projects. Both the Albany and Corvallis MPOs are completing these time-consuming work products individually, but we have been able to create some joint documents for both the Title VI plan and our upcoming public participation plan. Right. So almost done here. Can we merge? In summary, the question of whether the MPOs can merge is, in short, yes. In full, it's a long process with complicated mechanisms of approval, but manageable with patience. We as staff understand it will include a reduction of our total administration dollars, maybe not so much as last Friday, but it's a new day, but we also foresee that the savings on duplicative work products to mitigate this. Recent ODOT announcements of the funding loss provide additional complications, but regionally, after conferring with ODOT, FEA, and FHWA partners, we don't have any indication that we will lose funds that go out into our communities, as most of these are based on population. So what are the benefits? The perceived, thanks, Gordon. The perceived principal benefits are efficiency savings by having the required documents and reporting by staff, we would hope additional coverage by staff, but we can't say that for certain with the unexpected losses. That will be revised. We expect more effective meetings with more comprehensive regional membership and potentially the ability to meet quorum more frequently. We expect higher level of regional collaboration with easier project process for projects that cross both of our regions, and especially along highways 20 and 34. We also expect a more straightforward process for public involvement. Less MPOs for people to try to figure out who does what. And then finally, where do we go from here? Staff was asked by the Albany Area MPO Policy Board what questions or follow-on actions they would like to see from staff before deciding on the question of merging. As a member of both the Corvallis and Albany MPOs, I was asked to present to each jurisdiction and take feedback from each city, council and commission on the matter and return with our findings. So the policy board can make a final decision. So now I'd like to turn it over to everybody to hear your questions, comments, and concerns.
I can understand that the loss of funding is always a concern, but I've been aware for a long time about the duplicative effort and parallel planning documents. And I am supportive of the idea of a merger. I think that we share the populations that live in Corvallis and Albany. They work in one community and live in the other. It is a false division in my mind. I have a question about the complexity points. And by merging the two metropolitan planning organizations, do we increase in complexity in any way because of those issues that we have to deal with between the two?
Technically, by ODOT's formula, we decrease in complexity by 1.
That's just, I don't understand, but
It is where we take our major loss. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, before the last Friday's announcement. Yeah. And other MPOs have tried to speak on our behalf, especially Metro and Salem Kaiser, knowing that a bigger region equals more complex process, but the way the formula works out, we lose a complexity point based on our jurisdiction amounts.
That's just seems strange, but I don't understand the formulas, so. Okay, it sounds to me as though from a staffing perspective, you might be a little harder to field as much staff, but is that true?
We are currently undergoing a really rigorous internal budget review. I think we'll have better answers to that within the coming months to year. Fortunately, this process is slow, and we have all the time that we need to make sure that every step is taken in the right order. So as far as like staffing, whether we'll be able to remain 2 staff at full time, that is the goal. But with the staff admin funding loss, if we do pursue merger even after a funding loss, we might have a reduction in staff to 1.5, 1.8, depending on how it falls. It could look very different. It could look different.
Well, I would hope that you would be able to retain 2 FTE, but I'm in support of the concept. Questions, discussion? I know Commissioner Malone, you're very familiar with this topic.
Yeah, can you go back to the map?
Yeah.
I like maps.
Yeah.
From what I remember, the Corvallis area MPO was supporting. There wasn't a lot of negative feedback. The Albany area seemed like needed convincing. And I think some of that that little tan square that's separate, at the top right is Jefferson, which is an interesting. There's kind of a gap there. And depending on who's representing Jefferson, well, concerned about being left out of the funding or, when it's decision time.
Mhm.
Is that accurate?
We haven't heard much from Jefferson recently as far as on the policy board. It's part of this process is to reach out to every jurisdiction and get that just expansive feedback. We started with Benton County because, as Commissioner Malone knows, the Corvallis area MPO has already approved continuation of merger. Albany is asking for more community feedback. I say Albany, but the Albany area.
Well, just to tag along Commissioner Ogero's comments, it's one area, whether it's Highway 20, 34. There might be a bike path along there that spans the two. So it seems artificial to say they're separate. I mean, cars go back and forth, traffic counts and planning includes both. Seems more efficient to have one body representing the area. I would be hopeful we'd have a little more cloud with twice as many people speaking of one voice. So the funding cuts that were proposed last Friday, I mean, it's a proposal and take place in 2027, and that's ODOT checking in the couch for spare change to fix their budget, which seems like it's not going to fix your budget. And you were saying before we started, this is, well, ODOT lost out on cutting back on the fund exchange, so we'll look on another couch cushion for some spare change to help our budget. That's, and I don't think there's any question ODOT's budget has serious problems. The gas tax worked for 100 years, but it's not working. The 2017 big transportation package raised the gas tax. I think 1 penny this year, 2 pennies the next year, a total of 10 cents over 5 years or something like that. And that didn't come close to covering inflation, let alone making progress. So I guess I would be hopeful that the upcoming legislature will work its magic and get serious about operation and maintenance budgets for ODOT, so they can keep the roads plowed and potholes fixed, and striping, and chip seals, and all the things that need doing that we're getting beyond, more behind on every year.
Mhm.
And then if there's a decent package coming out of the legislature, then something like this reduction might go away. I would hope. I mean, I'd be curious what if you take money from all 5 MPOs, 6.
6 small MPOs and I think 3 large ones. So And,
Anyway,
yeah,
add it all up, and I don't think you'd have much money.
Hmm.
So
It's-
why are you doing this?
Yeah, I'm
Because they
showing
were Probably
it's,
told to.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
sounds like it.
it's total of $534,484.
Hmm.
So it's roughly $500,000 that they'll get out of that.
yeah, and then just to add some additional context, the budget conversation we've been having at an ODOT level. The MPOs receive a share of federal funds. That's a fixed amount, and we're all taking bites from the same pie. To look at a statewide level, ODOT would prefer to redistribute funds to regions that are growing faster. So the smaller MPOs, Albany, Corvallis, Middle Rogue, Rogue Valley, are giving up a share of our funds to shift to Portland and Bend that are growing at a faster rate. Now, if we were to merge and have a different growth rate, maybe that changes, but we won't know that until the next decennial census. And then on the conversation of being one region, we already model as one region. So the Corvallis, Albany, Lebanon model, CALM, is what the ODOT Transportation Planning Analysis Unit uses to model our traffic behavior as a region. So our model already behaves as though we were one region circulating traffic. And that is another point where we meet as a body.
It makes so much sense to work together if it's modeled as one region and there's that much transportation back and forth. It just reduce the number of meetings in half for Gary or Commissioner Malone. Yeah, and for all of you, yeah. Commissioner Wise, do you have questions?
Could you speak a little more to how we got where we are, like where this idea sort of originated from?
So historically, it started with the formation of the Albany area MPO. And I know at the time there was quite a few folks who would have how to talk about this. So when the Albany area MPO was formed, jurisdictions that were going to be wrapped up into the MPO, several of them spoke out against the formation of the MPO or being involved in the MPO.
At all.
At all, yeah. They didn't want to be their own MPO, let alone in any MPO. But the way the federal process works is once an urbanized area is established at 50,000 population or more, an MPO has to be formed. So there's not a lot of choice in that matter or in that regard. So then when asked if they wanted to become a single MPO with Corvallis, the overall opinion was no. I think part of that also at the time was members did not know what there was no educational portion and people didn't know what being an MPO was, how the funds were distributed. And now with over 10 years of time in service, people have gotten a much better look at like how MPOs operate. They become comfortable with the systems and processes. So we're at a much better position today. 2020, the merger conversation was discussed, and I think it had potential for a positive conclusion towards merger, but at the time there wasn't 100% surety as to whether communities would lose their surface transportation block grant funds, now titled state highway funds, or not. And that's a big one because our communities kind of rely on that as a couple $1 million influx every 3 years. So
There was also concern from Corvallis Transit that they got, because of their robust system, they got extra dollars, and the Albany Transit was regular funding. That turned out to be a non-issue.
yep.
Could you remind me about the makeup of the policy boards? Who who represents those, or what's the representation on those? Is it cities? So it's elected officials from there, or staff, or both?
So on our technical advisory committees, that is the staff level, and that's where Gary participates. On our policy boards, it is elected officials from both city council and commissions, and that's where Commissioner Malone participates.
So I just am thinking that representation, elected officials have turned over, you know, you probably had a different mix of elected officials over the years since
Mhm.
2013. And that will continue to change. Once, assuming this moves forward, once the two groups are together, what happens in 5 to 10 years if people start saying, oh, we want to pull them back apart again? I mean, is that an option or?
It is an option. It should actually be easier to do than merger, because at that point, our RTP cycle will be aligned, and that's a big lift. So in order to merge, Albany area is planning to do their regional transportation plan a year early.
Okay.
In staff time terms, I wrote the last Albany area one with assistance, and it took up the majority of a year. It's a big lift. I know when we've contracted it out, we contracted out the initial 2018 RTP with DKS, and that costs Albany area something like $680,000. It's much more affordable to do it at the staff level, and it's even more affordable to do one rather than two. Once we have those aligned, the process for unmerging is the same as merging. We just form two different MPOs instead of one MPO.
I have no problem with the concept, so thank you for.
If I can just a couple of things and observations here. One thing I think that's changed is the time, and people are now better educated, but I think Benton County being on both because of our North Albany connection has actually shown that it does work, that we can work together, and that a lot of the times when we go to the TAC or even at the policy board, the things we're talking about are pertinent, whether they're on the left side of the river or the right side of the river. I mean, we all are tied together. It's the loop. I mean, everything's kind of tied together. So, I mean, obviously very supportive of making it one. And another thing, when I was working for the city of Camas up in Washington, we were part of a unit there for Clark County, Vancouver, and we had to come together because if we had any hopes of getting any funding or being maybe more bang for our buck, because we were fighting Portland and we were fighting Seattle.
Yeah.
And coming together as we did for that little small region really was helpful. And I think over time, the merger will result in more funding coming our way, because we're not fighting again. We're not that we're fighting each other now, but it sure makes a more compelling story when it's just one big region. And then the model, like they're saying, you know, it's just a matter of the comfort level that everybody on the other side is still going to have their representation and they're saying, working together to make it happen. So I know I think it's long-term, it'd be a great thing to happen.
Please.
Yeah.
What I remember from in the 2020 era was yeah, good idea. Let's think about it and wait for the census to come out before really able to move forward. We definitely have the census. I appreciate your comments. I mean, you have to have some faith in the future that a larger, well-run organization will have more voice than two smaller ones.
And I know we're out of time here, so I'll try to be brief. Just to add on to Mr. Starkoff and Commissioner Malone's comments. If we were to merge, that would make us the 4th largest MPO in the region or in the state. So we would pass Medford and Bend. which I would believe that we would have, take that bench. That I think would give us a little more clout in these state level or statewide discussions.
Yes, and certainly more legislators in our geography
Mhm.
growing in the same direction.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think it sounds like there was a consensus on our board that we are supportive. I think our Campo Policy Board represented us the right way. And yeah. I would encourage you to move ahead.
Any thoughts on what AMPO needs to hear to sign up for this?
I always think more competitive pull is a great start. Like Gary said, it gives us more advantage when going up for grant applications, funding opportunities. And I think that's really going to be the main selling point. I also think that the representation piece, being pretty much not changing much, is a good piece. I know that I think it wasn't so much an issue in 2020, but in 2013, the big piece was kind of representation and being able to represent yourself. But it wasn't. There was some hesitation over whether folks were going to have to do something that someone else thought was best. But with that, but not in their interest. So
Yeah, the big cities dictating what a small town can, should.
that's a big concern.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why we break it into large cities, small cities, and non-city members
Yeah.
like
And-
that.
And I've only attended a couple of Capital Policy Board meetings, but they were very collegial and it was very much a discussion. I've never seen that kind of overwriting and anyone forcing anyone to do anything. So I think just demonstrating that culture, you're right, and having that 10 years of practice makes a difference.
Absolutely.
Do you have what you need from us?
Yes, Commissioner, absolutely.
Consensus.
Mhm.
To keep moving forward. And I would point out AMPO and CAMPO and then policy board and the TAC board and there's a lot of meetings.
There are.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yes.
We try to combine some with a few joint meetings here and there, and I know we have some planned for the rest of the year, but
Yeah.
can't do a joint meeting every time, unfortunately.
Ashley stays busy canceling.
Absolutely.
Moving around, yeah, it's like her
Lots
life.
of email from Ashley.
Yeah.
It's nice to see you in person and put a name with a face. Thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and meet with us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
See you soon. So we have a meeting very soon.
Okay, next we will have an update from Sheriff Ben Arsdale and Rachel McEnany and Rick Prager of the County Administration about the potential for a National Institute of Corrections technical assistance with respect to jail planning.
Hey, I thought I would start off if the sheriff is on. This is something that happened where Commissioner Wise and Commissioner Ojero and I were at the NACO Legislative Conference. And I knew when we took this position after JSIP, the bond went down, that we had a responsibility to build a correction facility, but we also needed to pause for a moment and kind of figure out what to do next. So I have a long-term friendship with a friend of mine who wrote the Prison and Jail Standards Act, which most anybody who works in jails, including our folks right in downtown Corvallis, will say the PREA standards are the best standards that have come out in the last, they've been around for almost 20 years, but that's prevention planning, responsive planning, education for correction officers, wardens, those who work in this population, and the screening for risk of sexual victimization and abusiveness and the reporting structure that exists. It helps with investigations and discipline and medical and mental care. And it also provides a tremendous amount of data and compliance those who work in this field feel it has really changed the entire environment within our corrections. So from there, I kind of said problem zero, and we were all socializing. And it was recommended to me that we put an application in that must be written and submitted by an elected sheriff, not a board of commissioners, to the National Institute of Corrections. We have been accepted to get technical assistance. And from that, we've had a launch finally. And I've assigned Rick Krager, and of course, the sheriff is the lead and project manager on the specifics of what the National Institute of Corrections is going to help us with. And I will lead it over to Rick or Sheriff Van Arnsel if they would like to start speaking, because you had your first meeting last week, right? And once again, I just want to highlight that this discussion topic and the next discussion topic are real opportunities of where I think Benton County can really be on the map as a leader in not only how to build a local correction facility, but also the work that Sean will give us an update as well. I think these are two really, really important initiatives that you both all have been very, very supportive with.
Is the sheriff on?
I think the sheriff's on.
Okay. There he is. Sheriff, with your permission, I'll go ahead and jump in if that's okay with you. So as Rachel indicated, there's a process that you have to go through with the National Institute of Corrections of submitting an application. Earlier this summer, I met with Rachel and the sheriff to kind of get up to speed on this organization and the process in which we go through this. And so as Rachel indicated, we did submit a application, essentially the sheriff did, because he has to write a supporting letter to say that he affirms everything that has been put into the application. And he was kind enough to do that. I worked on this primarily focusing on, again, as Rachel said, coming off the heels of the bond measure failure and thinking about moving forward. How do we recalibrate? How do we think about looking at this differently? And is this a support service that could help us in those efforts? So put the application in, and again, it didn't have to be, real specific. It was more general about things that we were looking for. But some of the areas that identified for us in terms of our desired outcomes was, how do we more effectively use data and information to really help drive whatever direction that we go. We obviously want to talk about, are there alternatives? So we had a plan that we put forward clearly. And is there ways that we can look at things different? One thing I like to always mention is Deflection is a new supportive program coming out. Does that change the way that we approach this problem going forward? Obviously, we know that we are going to need funding. And is this the best funding strategy to take on? Is there an approach? And you all talked a little bit about, I know Commissioner Malone is familiar with the awesome program that comes through the state. Is there some kind of matching effort that we take on to incentivize? So again, those are just ideas. We need to carefully listen to the community. Obviously, we had, good report that came out from Brenda Downham last fall. So how do we evaluate previous community outreach strategies in support of funding a new jail? What are the best practices that we've seen around the nation? Is there, again, having someone that has a broader lens can help us really determine what are some of the specific strategies that could be successful. And then, again, to the extent we can, we know that this is a big effort. And if there's technical assistance that can be there with us to help us through some of this work, as opposed, as you all know, we brought kind of a contractor in late last time around. And is this an effort that we can maybe lock up a little sooner to be able to help us for the long term? So what I described to you were just sort of, these are kind of the outcomes that we're looking for. The next step was then for them to receive and review and then invite the applicant to a discussion and to see if this fits well for a technical assistance grant. Basically, it would be them providing their support to us. So at this point, there's no decisions that they have made or locked in. However, the sheriff and I met with the folks on last Friday to discuss sort of generally what we were thinking. They were it was a very engaging conversation. I walked away, I don't know about the sheriff, but I mean, I felt like there was really good dialogue going on. They had a couple experts, ones that were from the jails, and of course, the sheriff and him able to really kind of talk about different types of things around operations, around beds and different sizes, different types of strategies. So again, it was usually more of a general discussion of, is this something that Benton County could actually value from in terms of this. So talked to the lead actually this morning as well, and she was very impressed with the sheriff and some of the discussions and some of the things that we have done. We provided them the 2019 assessment plan. Thank you, Commissioner Ojo, for that. They thought that was really helpful. I also provided them the report that was provided from in the fall, just in terms of a debrief of things that went well, things that didn't go so well. So they feel like that's all really good information. The one big takeaway for me was the importance and value that they believe needs to be put towards the WCJC. And that in all cases, in successful efforts in other communities, having a strong criminal justice commission that is doing a lot of the driving of this, really trying to be there to help not only develop what is the model that we move forward, but also the advocacy component, because these are typically experts around the law enforcement area that come together to drive recommendations. So that was just one of the takeaways for me. This was a really important question that they had in terms of a follow-up. The sheriff and I mentioned that we're in the process of revamping those bylaws and reestablishing efforts around that. They were very pleased to hear that, and I actually really appreciated the bylaws or the draft bylaws that have been put together. The intent is for them to get back to us sometime in this next week of what they would scope. And then I would assume once we have a little bit better idea of what they would offer to us, we would want to bring that to the Board of Commissioners for an official review and approval in terms of the county taking this on. At this point, there is no cost associated with that. I want to be clear that we don't anticipate, other than, of course, our time and effort that would need to be put into it. But my feeling is that they would provide a lot of that needed technical assistance. So I think that's essentially where we're at right now. Recap, I would invite the sheriff to correct anything that I have said or give his feedback and impressions of the discussion so far. So Sheriff, do you want to add anything?
I would just add that Rick's summation is spot on. I mean, everything that he said is absolutely 100%. I had to dust off some of my talking points from when Commissioner Ojo and I were doing the JSIP tour, just because I hadn't thought about some of those things in a very long time, and they asked those very questions. So that was good to have, and I always, Commissioner Ojo was always very articulate, and I always said I was kind of the Wreck-It Ralph follow-up, and so I guess that's good feedback from Rick that they thought we did well. The only thing I would add is I just want to make sure for everybody in the room that we still think about what our voters and our constituents and what the message they sent is, and that we damn sure need to follow up with that and make sure that whatever recommendations came from Brenda, along with this group, that we make sure that we keep the voters updated every step of the way. They had a lot of questions about the WCJC, about our LIPSIC, and we were able to provide them answers with that. And like Rick said, redoing the bylaws with a lot of input from Commissioner Ojo has been good. And it's timely. And so, no, I'm curious to see where this goes, but I'm also very cautious as we move forward.
I want to say two things, and that is that I read Brenda's report in the aftermath of the bond measure as partly but quite positive, because I think overall there's great community understanding for the need for a new jail. We just asked for too much and tried to load the bond measure down too much. So I think that we still have a path forward, but how we engage with the community is going to be critically important. And my frustration in the past was that we only presented people with kind of the plan after it was all baked and then asked for feedback rather than asking for feedback along the way. I think one of the things that this technical assistance process that the National Institute for Corrections offers is that they take you through a stage by stage process with community engagement and partner engagement all along the way, rather than just presenting the community with a fully baked plan and saying, take it or leave it. That doesn't work. And that what we're talking about is the first phase of what they have to offer, but they offer a technical assistance that takes you not only from the initial planning and community engagement and then the technical planning, but even into the actual implementation of a new jail and support in that initial operations phase of actually moving into a new facility. So it's free. So I am very excited about this potential path for the county. I think that it could be a very, very rich process. And it's really up to us to make the most of it.
As this was being discussed, I was thinking of R.E. Basil Wagner's town hall meetings, 2019, 2018. 19, and I thought there was good discussion of what we need and asking the community, and I think there was, what I remember is very well attended meetings. The library was full, Philomath Museum meeting room was full. And then that darn COVID hit, and I think just took any momentum that we had, and I was too optimistic that would carry forward into 2023, and the discussions in 2019 were just a correctional facility. And so I think that's definitely one of the take home messages, is keep it simple and make sure the community's on board. And I don't have anything to base this on, but I think if we'd been able to vote in 2021, it would have at least been close, if not approved. So, but to what we're talking about today, I'm excited. I think that third party view of what we have and what we need is critical. I think you could say it's a neutral third party. What we do, they don't gain anything.
Exactly. They're not a construction firm that's also doing consulting.
Architectural firm, or they're just subject experts. And I think that other than staff time, that there's no cost to the county. We shouldn't be shy about sharing that, through diligence. We found them, Rachel, and I'm thrilled that we're moving forward. I think we have time to do a good job and get the pieces in place before we potentially ask the community for funding.
I want to point out that Sheriff Jackson and some of his folks at the time did participate, I think, in early NIC training prior to back in the teens. And Jeff, you may know better than I, or at least Under Sheriff Rogers might know that, but there was just a decision at the time to turn away from that technical assistance, and the technical assistance folks also worked in a different way. They hosted kind of a formal like a training that was in Colorado on site there, and it wasn't as tailored to a community's needs. And now the technical assistance they offer is not generalized. It's much more specific to a jurisdiction, to a place, to the context. And so we might have taken this path earlier, but they weren't offering the same service earlier. So just wanted to make that point as well.
So I have a few different questions. I'm sort of struggling to try to piece this all into my mind in the correct way. Not having anything in the packet to read ahead of time makes it more difficult for me to, understand all of this stuff on the fly now. So what is the scope of the technical assistance? I mean,
Yeah, so that's what we're working on right now, is to try to basically give them our information on what has happened. So a lot of the time that we spent on Friday was giving them the history of all of this. We've provided them sort of how we got to that place of the bond measure. And we've told them, here's some of our general thoughts about kind of the objectives that we'd like to accomplish. Obviously, we want to be successful in passing support for that. But I think their job now is to take that information and, based on their whole portfolio of technical assistance, figure out how to come to us and say, this is what we would recommend. I think one of the things they also mentioned, I don't think I said earlier to the sheriff, was, a operational component in terms of looking at your existing operations as well to see, okay, are there things that could potentially be changed, not only for the benefit now, but also as you think about how you support a new jail going forward. So that's what we're kind of waiting on now, as we presented our story. And now they will tell us what they think they can offer to us, which we would bring back to you.
Right, and then also, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I think we're, because this will be led by the sheriff, the board want to have a discussion today, and goal setting also is the role of WCJC. And now that it has been really identified that this is something that has to be a huge priority to make this successful, where can the Board of Commissioners weigh in? And, we do have that position funded, right? And we do have someone in place.
For what, the staffing for the WCJC?
Right, staffing, but also
Yes.
future side of, we're taking on a biannual budget. Do we need to bring more capacity to it?
That's a really good question.
So
And
that's where I'd like you guys, yeah.
There's some fluidity and in terms of how we are updating the WCJC bylaws. The way it's structured now, there was an underlying intergovernmental agreement as well that provided a dues collection mechanism from jurisdictions. We are updating the bylaws and leaving out the reference to the 190 organization or intergovernmental agreement. And our intent is working with the sheriff and DA and Vance Crony is to develop a parallel IGA that will specify some dues collection mechanism. But that will probably only cover that 0.2 FTE that is currently being provided out of the district attorney's office. And that 0.2 FTE is sufficient for logistical arrangements of meetings, putting together programs, and making sure that, the executive committee of the WCJC is functional, but it's not enough to do any kind of content work. And I think that moving forward, if they're going to play a larger role and actually be the body that steers this work forward, it may need more staffing, and it is a budgetary consideration. But that's a decision that will have to be made in concert with the executive committee of WCJC and with DA Jocelyn in particular, because that position currently resides in the district attorney's office.
in all due respect, you are retiring, so it's gonna
Yep.
be a really important role for one of the commissioners' portfolio moving forward, so.
So, I guess what I'm looking for is what's the end game here? What are we hoping for at the end of this? So I've heard we're hopefully getting operational components. Advice on that, is the end goal to help us go back out for a bond?
So I'll let the sheriff weigh in as well, but I think from my perspective and this whole effort is how do we recalibrate our focus on going forward? Because I think the fact still exists that we need a new jail. And so what is the best strategy based on all the history that we have been through? How do we want to approach that this time because I think we've sort of had this, I guess you kind of cooling off period to kind of rethink about what, and getting the report, what does the community have to say? So now how do we rethink about what that looks like? Where were our missteps last time that we can make corrective action this time? Is there a different funding strategy that we take on? How do we more effectively use data and information to drive how we look at the envelope? So probably all of those things, Nancy, but to answer your question, the end game would be a new strategy that we can start to put forward to ultimately get a new jail, be it going out to the community for another bond measure, or hopefully there would be another funding strategy out there. But of course, we kind of run dry on some of those.
Or matching strategy. And I think, Rick, what you're describing is basically the first phase of the technical assistance that the NIC can offer. That I did mention operational work. They have basically three tiers of technical assistance they offer, and we're talking about that first phase, that first level. And then we can potentially continue on working with them into those other two levels. So it's, as I say, I think it'll be a phased process, and there'll be a lot of opportunity along the way to decide whether to continue or not.
And
I would just add, everything Rick said is accurate. I would just add for Commissioner Wise and really for Commissioner Malone and Commissioner Ojero. I said it once, I'll say it again. I'm cautious because my name's wrapped all over this thing, right? So I'm cautious. I'm not just going to go make a decision without first discussing stuff with the three of you and make sure that we are all in alignment. I want to give you that promise and my word on that right now. I'm cautious.
I have a couple more comments. One is that, Rick, you mentioned a cooling off period. I don't think we are out of the cooling off period yet. I think there's still a lot of heat. I think that many community members don't think that we have learned our lesson. And so I just want to be just abundantly cautious that it doesn't give the approach that we are trying to weasel our way into, we're going to say all these really big, good sounding things now. And then at the end, oh, well, it's just a bond again. And I just want to be very clear that I do not have the stomach for another bond anytime soon. I can't see myself going out for another bond in the next 5 years. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. That's my feelings in the moment now. That's not to say that I don't support an initiative and trying to make things better, because we do need to make things better with our jail. I acknowledge that. I want to be cautious as well. I think what could make me feel better is I need some stuff in writing. And can I see an application, a copy of the application? Just something that I can look at offline. And
I would also say that NIC has a great website. And if we share the website, then it would be possible for my fellow commissioners to explore that as well.
Yeah, it's in your inbox now.
Okay.
So happy to share some additional information. And if this makes you feel any better, Commissioner Wise, this isn't sort of the typical application process that I would normally say is a federal grant. It's like a 10 or 15-minute exercise to sort of it's almost like filling out a survey. That's what it felt more like, to say, here's kind of our situation in our community. how can you help us? So, but happy to share that. But just know that, and as the sheriff said, there's not, we're just telling them this is what we know. We're looking to their expertise to help craft that scope of work. So once that's ready, hopefully by the end of the week, you'll be the first to see it. I feel like at that point, it becomes, even though it's free, it is kind of a contract that we have with them. And I would not feel comfortable without the sheriff's blessing and the three of your blessing to move that forward. And to your point, in terms of the cooling off period, I agree. I think that we all recognize that, we have to really be smart going forward and what is the best approach. We heard from our community and what they had to say. And, we can sit here and say, well, we need a new jail, but maybe there are other approaches. And that's one of the things they talked a lot about on Friday was we don't jump right to, okay, new facility. Maybe there are other things that can be looked at, other models. And so what I like about this is, right, we're not saying in the next 6 months, we're saying, let's take a big step back and let's think of a really holistic strategy, a smart strategy that is that involves community engagement, that gets the buy-in from the beginning, because ultimately, I think that's how we do get to the place we all want to be it a bond or other funding sources, is really to have that buy-in and support, and trying to learn from maybe where some of that lacked last time.
One of the things that I believe that this process offers is that exploration of alternatives, and looking at best practices around the country, looking at all of the pretrial programs in other places, models of deflection, you name it. And we were not able, the sheriff and I, when we went around and talked to communities, to say that we were not able to coherently describe the work that we were doing in that space. And our messaging had never been built on the context of, okay, here are the best practices. We've engaged with those best practices. We know what they are. We're doing some of these things because we were so focused on the bond package and all those buildings. And it was very, very difficult. So I think that's part of what they can help with too, is to help us pull out the story better. Because I think we have a very compelling case for a new correctional facility. Maybe not as large as we were talking about, maybe not with as many bells and whistles. I see Jeff wincing, but I think that this is the kind of process we need to go through in order to be ready to go out with another funding measure, if we choose to do that in 3 years, or, we need to lay the groundwork. The WCJC needs to be stronger. We need to have all of these things in place. And I think this process will help us do that.
So how do we tell the people, how do we tell our constituents that, I went around during JSIP also and told people, well, this is all data-driven approaches. We've done our homework. And now it feels like, oh, well, we didn't really do our homework enough. And I know that things change. I know that this program was not previously available, but where is the trust? How do I expect the community members to believe me that I really have the right information this time?
Yeah, I think, to me, trust is not just comes overnight. I think trust comes with time and consistency. And I think that's, again, back to the point you made, this is not something that is baked and ready to go right now. This is, let's learn from the past and let's figure out how to do better. And to your point, we need to rebuild that trust. We do. And I think the way you rebuild that trust is being crystal clear in terms of the information that you're providing, being over communicative, being super involved in the community, engage with them and helping them and having them help us make those decisions and understand better why we move. So I think, and it's nothing against the past effort. I think everybody did the best they could. I think you did have COVID that really sort of disrupted things. I'm not trying to make excuses. I just think that so to your question, Nancy, that part of telling the community is we've heard you. You lack the trust, and now we want to try to do our best to rebuild that with you and show that we're being very intentional taken advantage of these type of technical assistance to help us do better.
Sure, and I appreciate that, and I feel like I can only speak for myself as one commissioner, I feel like I tried my best to listen. I think we all have, we heard that people wanted the children and families' mental health. You know, that was an important part, so we worked with Dan Rayfield to get that moved forward. People said, yes, we support the EOC, that's moving forward, so I know we are listening and we are making progress where we can, I know that, but you know, public perception doesn't always reflect that.
Well, I think completing some of these projects that we've been talking about, having the crisis center go from the picture board and a fence to an operational building, like you say, the children and families facility, so that we can say we are we have a suite of possibilities for handling some of these problems, and we have physical buildings and programs to show for it. And that in May of 2023 or earlier than that, it was more theoretical, and now we have programs running. The crisis center will be up and running next spring. We'll be building the new courthouse and EOC. I mean, so going from talking about what we are planning to do, here it is. And that the correctional facility, however it comes out in this discussion, is one of the needed upgraded facilities.
I want to go back to the point about our decisions being data driven. There was a lot of data that underpinned the criminal justice system's assessment. And one of the key recommendations that came out of that was not making that a snapshot, but having a continuous documentation and as certain metrics that could characterize our system so that those data were always current and so that we could measure our own progress and course correct. We never did that. And COVID definitely just kind of wiped that off of the list. That is one of the key things that I believe that the WCJC needs to own, is that set of data metrics that characterize the system and that we can use to do that course correction and that continual improvement. There were certain facts and figures that community members requested that for some reason, we just could not produce at a staff level. Whether it was kind of a range of cost per square foot for jail types and different levels of systems and supports in them, or whether it was the kind of the actual operational costs moving forward into an implementation or one thing or another. And those are the things that we have to build trust. And I think Brenda Downham's report does a really good job documenting some of those very specific kinds of questions that we just were not equipped to answer. If and when we go out again, we have to have all those answers. We can't go, I don't know. And I think that, again, this process and the kinds of questions that these folks are asking already will lead to that. And we have to be so much better prepared.
I agree. I just wonder how, like, people are gonna ask, how is this different? How is this gonna be different? How are we gonna make sure that we don't just get the results of what we should do and let it sit on a shelf?
We are going to listen to all the questions they asked. We are going to find answers to all of those questions they asked. And we're going to take them back to the community and say, does this make sense? Or do we need to do more analysis? What does this sound right or not? Rather than, saying, no, we can't answer that. That just does not work.
Well, I completely agree with that.
Well-
Thank you for that.
And I think we have the advantage next time around of a narrow focus of what we're asking for, And we can talk about the other facilities, but,
Yep.
some of them are already in place, and so it's, like can have a better discussion, more focused, discussion, next time around with a lot of information that we've developed, whether it's what we can use from the Ari Beazle Wagner era, and moving forward to the discussions that we're having now.
One of the things that was amazing to me was that the people in the room, the community members that were engaged during that assessment process that Ari helped us with, and the people that were in the room during COVID and site selection, and the people in the room around the bond engagement were three different groups of people. And there was overlap, but not a strong through line. And that was also very difficult because, okay, yes, we had worked with this group and they said, yes, this is the direction you should go. But those people kind of evaporated into the woodwork. And so it was very challenging. And so I think that's the other thing we need that continuity from the WCJC, from, a broader, council, and then real clear community engagement.
I guess I just wanted to quickly underscore something Commissioner Moore just said a moment ago, and I think all three of you have heard me say this in my previous position, that it was amazing to me coming here on how many capital projects were going all at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think I've said to a few of you that some communities, it's like, okay, one of those is enormous. We had like 3, 4. And then there was the additional things, and Nancy mentioned earlier, that you were able to accomplish after the bond measure failure with facility, the behavioral health building, as well as, and one of the things that wasn't recognized, but the work on the homelessness piece in terms of supportive housing. So you're doing a lot. And I think if we could get to that place of actually completing a lot of these facilities, you'll have the site available. There's a lot of hurdles that you all had to get through.
Yeah.
So it does put you hopefully 3-5 years down the road in a better place to be able to say, okay, now this has been accomplished and this is the part that's still missing. So, and again, I think sometimes to step back and think about what you have accomplished, though. And I know it's easy to say, oh, gosh, we missed the jail. And I think we all agree that was unfortunate, but what has been accomplished is huge. And the results you're going to see are going to be massive here in the next few years.
The fact that we have the, as you say, the land for the community safety and justice campus, and that we were talking about a campus approach, meant that we acquired a parcel large enough for the jail. Because if we've been talking about courthouse DA's office only, then we would have had a very different parcel. So I think we are slowly setting ourselves up for success.
Yeah, and just the storytelling as you go out and talk to constituents, and the pain or distrust that I mean, you all three of you are institutional knowledge of the community as we try to propose things a lot of times, and I know there's a whole lot of hurt, but again, we have to show that we're good stewards of taxpayer money, that most of these facilities have been built or budgeted through grant funding and through the help through appropriations with the legislature. That's smart. That's, that once again is something that, and again, having that land to plan out. So the projects that we really have to land the plane is the crisis center, highlighting behavioral health center that we have now, showing that we really can build things. We're going to have a new courthouse. We are, and and we are also going to have an EOC. So if those 4 projects can really be highlighted, and I'm looking at my PIO in the back of the room to help talk about where do we need to be able to talk to the people who live here and say, okay, not only is the county growing, but they're making really thoughtful infrastructure in place. And, again, it's also about people as well, but and it's also about things about the deflection program, that we're not trying to build a huge old correction facility and lock everyone up. So I think we have to get better at the yeah buts and kind of lean into this, but I think this is a thoughtful approach. It's going to take time. We haven't talked about the Jails and Justice Center, which is based in Colorado, which can take us to the next step, but we have to get through this NIC piece. And, they had some strict rules of how we were even going to be considered. Yeah.
I just want to add it as well. Commissioner Wise had a question. I want to assure all three of the commissioners. You did give accurate information when you spoke with your constituents. Anything that was asked of me, I made sure it was the most up-to-date and accurate information. We work closely with Western Oregon University's Restorative Justice Reentry Program to validate some of the things we did in the jail. I just want to make sure you understand what you told people was straightforward and honest and the truth. And don't think you ever got anything other than that from me, and you'll ever get anything than that from me. So
It was just, we just had gaps that we didn't have the answers for. Yeah, agreed. I agree with you, Sheriff.
Yes, I appreciated your efforts and your honesty and transparency during that time, Sheriff. Thank you. I guess, so I'll just share kind of my last concern, which is we talked about a phased process, a phased approach, and we can back off anytime if it doesn't make sense. But I also worry that sometimes things can, you build momentum and the snowball. And I just worry about the sunk cost fallacy, is so we get it done with one phase and it's like, well, I don't know if this makes sense. Oh, but we've already put in this much effort. We've got momentum. Let's keep going. And then just keeps going and going. And at what point, I felt like there were some components of JSIP that happened with. So I just don't want that to happen again.
Thank you, Commissioner Wise. Appreciate that. And I hope you can trust that. I certainly will always be the
And I don't mean to stare. I'm looking at you because I'm facing you, but I don't want you to think I'm just putting this all on you.
No worries at all. And I understand your concern and certainly want to be cost conscious in all of this. And you're right, you don't want to get to this place where you sort of force your hand. I think to me, this is more of a chance to really evaluate what is the best strategy. And then once we all feel, okay, yeah, we really work through this and we're ready to take that next phase, we do it together and do it in a thoughtful way that all the parts are in place. So I can assure you that at least in this particular place we're looking at this is just as a technical assistance that is of no charge to us, but there obviously will be time spent. I also feel like, in my new position now, I can help play a role in this effort. I mean, a lot was on the county administrator, as you know, last time. That was delegated down to a coordinator position. Not that there was anything wrong with that, but I'm hopeful I can be helpful in this piece to help work with you as commissioners too at the policy level. So again, I think that we need to be talking a lot about this as we start to go through and make sure to address your concerns of let's not go too far out on our skis and make sure that we're thoughtful about the ramifications steps we take.
But maybe it's every 2 months, 3 months, we bring this to goal setting, continue the conversation.
Sure. Or as needed anytime, if there's something new that is happening, I would anticipate, like I said, wanting to come back before you again here relatively soon with a scope of work.
Yep. Sounds good. So a while back, we talked about starting a savings account for the jail.
Yeah.
How's that going?
Not so well.
We need to hire a CFO.
Yeah, well, that's one thing. I think obviously some of the still outstanding agreements we need to get to in terms of some of our costs. I think trying to let that pan out on what are our future costs in relations to salaries. So that sort of carrying on puts a place where it's hard to say, okay, let's commit something until we have a better future forecasting. In addition, I think to Rachel's point, certainly having a new CFO will be helpful to be able to focus more on the long-term forecasting going forward. So
actually, I think it's a great question to ask in the CFO interviews this week. If they have ever set up designated fund up, that maybe we could ask in one of the rounds. Could be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So during the budget process, will
Yeah.
we be able to address that?
I think so. I mean, again, if everything goes the way it should, we'll bring in someone that can help us through this process. And this will likely be something I'll work with the sheriff. I mean, the approach, I think, not to get into too weedy with everyone, but the idea would be a debt sinking fund contribution. Similar to like what we do with PERS bonds. I was just trying to figure out how to make it work because it's not like the PERS bonds where it benefits everybody.
Yeah.
It's specific to law enforcement. So I think, but there is a way we can go through a contribution effort. And again, I think a good CFO, someone better than I that can kind of come in and really help support that effort will be good.
Okay, my last question is, so someone is going to give me a copy of the application.
That would be me.
Thank you. And then perhaps yes, I got the website. I haven't looked at it yet. You just said it. Are there, if there are specific places on the website that I could look that you think are more important than others?
Sure. I'll send it to all three of you. I'll send you the link, the application that was submitted. And then I will also point out where maybe some of it's pretty cool to go through and explore. It just talks about the different types of technical assistance that they provide.
I know you're very busy, so do you have an idea of when we'll be able?
I'll have it to you before the end of this meeting.
Thank you so much.
I might follow up with you a little bit more detail, but.
Okay. Any other questions for either the sheriff or for Rick?
I just want to thank the sheriff. It was fun to work with him on Friday and, it's fun to watch him get kind of excited in terms of, I'm just excited in that he's very passionate about the work and very passionate about, doing what's right for the county. So it was fun to work with him and listen to him and learn from him as we move through this process. So thank you for your contribution and commitment to this effort.
I appreciate the update. Seems like this notion has been floating around for a couple months, and it's nice to see it taking form and glad we're in the queue and because this is as far as facilities, the biggest hole in our overall facilities plan.
Agreed. So I guess one more last thing. It's an application, they might tell us no.
No.
No?
At this point, we are in, and this was an intake meeting, and
Yeah.
so.
So they've accepted our.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I think the only reason they would ever say no is if they think that, okay, we are not really at a place where we could do anything to help you. I didn't get that impression. I think they had a lot of different ideas. I think the sheriff is nodding his head that he agrees as well. And so I think it's just a matter of them crafting something that best fits us for us to review.
I know the sheriff has been pretty considerate about this kind of thing and cautious. So
Yeah.
if the sheriff is for it, then that gives me some confidence.
Well, thank you all. I think it's been a useful discussion. It's been a painful, failure of the bond was a painful moment. And I think we have not really done a healing. And I think that this discussion was probably the frankest discussion we've had since that time. And I'm hoping that it will go a ways towards being able to move forward in a productive way without getting triggered.
Maybe we should hire a therapist.
Yeah, well, thank you all. I really appreciate the discussion. And I'm going to call for a 5-minute break, and then we will jump into sustainable materials management plan. Well, welcome back, and we will turn the floor over to Sean. And is Bailey here with us virtually?
Bailey yesterday was looking really rough. I think he's gonna be sitting in he better be sitting in the dentist chair right now. He was really, he was not, he did not look comfortable in any way. So sorry, I'm flying solo with you today.
Everybody touch your jaw.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
Rub your jaws for a second.
No,
Yeah.
he was just,
Yeah.
Bailey has this big smile and everything.
Yes.
No, that was not him yesterday. So yes, I'm hoping he's feeling much better today. So thank you. T minus 8 days or 8 business days. So wanted to give you an update. I'm not sure if it's going to be the full 45 minutes. However, every time the four of us, Rick, Bailey, me and Lindsay come together and I show a map or something, 25 minutes evaporates in a heartbeat. So we'll see where that goes. So wanted to begin with in your packet. I again always want to say thank you for your understanding. The agenda changed 3 times before noon yesterday. It's just been before that was not a joke. The last time I presented, by the time I I had an email changing it. So things are flying very, very quickly. So the big 3 things I wanted to share with you is our current membership, then go to the agenda, and then give you a view of the first draft of some of the deliverables that our consultant is producing, to kind of give a story and a background of where we're going for with the actual kickoff. Details are kickoff will be 2 Mondays, which is the 21st up in Salem. The way that we're logistically working this in is that I'm gonna provide all the emails of the member participants to Lindsay. And then you're gonna start seeing on your calendar materials popping in that way. That's the most efficient way. That way, no one's sending, 15 different emails from all over. So the agendas, the background, all that will just be inserted into the actual calendar invite. And then the logistics are 10 to 3, coffee and networking from 9:30 to 10. So that's kind of where we are. And we'll get into the details of actual numbers in a second. But in your packet is in the memo, what I wanted to focus on was where we are with membership and participation. So we have, and I have a full list here, didn't want to get into all the specific names, but as you know, we spoke with more than 40 people, Bailey and I, over about 6-8 weeks. And we have, including all other 12 northwestern counties, that's basically Lane and above. So the individual we invited either have the capacity, interest, or expertise to be joining us from, like, we have 3 camps for lack of a better word. So we have solid waste coordinators, managers, experts. Each county is different. So some have an actual Bailey, a solid waste manager, some run their health department, public works, et cetera. But we have obviously Benton, Lane, Lincoln, Lynn, Marion, Portland, and Metro. Working out the specifics, especially Portland and Metro, I'm meeting with Portland tomorrow, Metro on Thursday, to see exactly who is going to be the official people. So that is on that first bullet when you start to see the solid waste coordinators and managers. We also have John Dool, who was the solid waste manager for OSU. What's great is that he and Catherine Duvall, who is also invited, who is the chief of staff, I think is her official title, for the environmental caucus in the legislature. We're both on BCDT. It's great just to have that continuation. We're even thinking about having John give a quick overview, so it's not just Benton County talking all that. And so those are the other 2. That's why you see Portland State up there. We spoke with 6 elected, elected officials from 6 different counties. We have you, Commissioner Ojero, as chair of this, and Commissioner Cameron from Marion County having introductory comments. We'll get into the agenda. And it was really great to have those conversations, especially on the coast. We spoke with commissioners on Lincoln and Tillamook. Just a different feel, just a completely different feel from the Valley. Things like tourism, their waste fluctuates a lot. RVs is a big issue, specifically, as in, like, I had this experience, in Maryland, derelict boats, it has a hole in it, you just throw it in a cove and walk away. They have the same with RVs, just up and down the coast. So, and we'll get into the map in a second. I'll come back to the coast. So those are the elected officials. We have AOC. I have a meeting with Mallory Roberts tomorrow. Jen Goff, I always forget her other. Thank you, has left AOC, and so Mallory's, they're gonna decide who, yeah. Yeah, I reached out, got the kickback, and then that's why, was that a district meeting a few Fridays ago? Introduced myself to Mallory, and so she and I are meeting to see who at AOC is gonna be joining us. And then you see the state legislator official, that's Catherine. DEQ, we got the email this morning, working on capacity from their end, who can attend. We do have commitment of their experts, which is what we really need, specifically in the built environment and food. And so those two are, we've had several conversations, very excited about, they're excited that we're moving forward. And then regional materials management experts, it's been great working with RRS, our consultant, because they are so ingrained in the Recycle Modernization Act, the RMA. So when we're talking about someone, they know all the players. And so we have a list of currently 8 or 9 who we are either have invited or are about to in the next day or two. So right now we have somewhere in the 22 range of members, invitees, whatever noun you want. Then we start getting into others who will be in attendance. Currently, we have all 3 you commissioners, as well as Rachel, Rick, myself, Lindsay, from our staff. I want to take a side note with a conversation with Vance and kind of set the table. The 3 of you, he's not uncomfortable with you being in the same room because it's informational. No decisions are going to be made. It's in Salem. He had shared, and if he was here, he would say all this. In the spring, as we move forward, there'll need to be a decision from you 3, because decisions will be made in that task force setting. And so we'll just kind of build that bridge when we get there. But he didn't have any reservations about the 3 being there, since there'll also be Commissioner Cameron in attendance. So I just want to give that little blurb. There's also going to be RRS staff, CFM. Will also either are in attendance there. We also have an NREC liaison, Sydney Tamplin, who is an NREC member. She's actually going to grad school right now on environmental services and specifically on waste. And it was great considering NREC's new role, somewhat in SWAC, to have them. And then various staff just as in support. So right now we have roughly about 40, 45, which is good. Also want to talk a little bit about setting expectations. I have the original Excel spreadsheet that Darren made months ago. That number was in the 60 and 70 range. In fact, we had, Lindsay saw that we actually have their main ballroom that seats 200 to 250 people. Since we're not inviting the OSU football team and the marching band, we significantly downsized that just so it didn't look like cavernous. So as I said, we have about 40-ish people in attendance. So that's kind of just want to focus on those bulleted points on membership.
And I might just add, around the membership piece, this is obviously something we all talked a little bit about, and trying to get a better handle of the scope of people and expertise. I think we all agree 20 to 25 is a more manageable type group. Doesn't necessarily mean, though, that you can pull other experts into the discussion, but, we're trying to identify an effective group that can, really a good consortium of different individuals to come together to move this work forward. So this feels more manageable.
Yeah.
And this is the task force, and there'll be working groups.
Exactly.
Rick says that may involve others.
For those online, want to be absolutely crystal clear, this is an open door. We don't even know the questions. I mean, honestly, this has never been done before. A couple of the Baileys said that there was an agreement back in the 70s. We just really haven't. And in those interviews of all the solid waste side, they really don't talk to each other, honestly. And some, especially like Clackamas, and it's their, if we're going to say Bailey's, it's their Rick that is doing it. They're just filling out the forms and doing the contracts. And so
Doing nothing.
those things, but it is, and that's kind of the situation. And so it was interesting. One of the things talking about Tillamook and Lincoln, would you want to be collaborative? And they're like, well, I don't know, because we have our own local haulers and we don't want to mess with that. We're going to get into the downside of that decision. But we've just never looked at this regionally. And so when we're talking to the experts in Lane and Marion and Metro and Portland, hey, maybe this might not be a bad idea, as opposed to having 50 different agreements or contracts. Maybe we do have similar language, or we have one contract. So we don't even know the questions that are going to come up. So get to your point, Commissioner Ojero, that's what the winter and spring is all about, getting to June 30th. And that is also in your packet. What are the ultimate, it's in the agenda. What are the things that we want to be done by June 30th? And so that's a good segue if it's okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We have AOC and legislative officials and staff. Have you approached anyone at League of Oregon Cities yet?
Excellent question. Not yet. It's no rule. It's not this on them necessarily, but what we've heard is it's been it's very specific to a city, and there hasn't really been a more collective discussion at the municipality level. That's what we were hearing, as opposed to AOC that apparently used to have a waste management subcommittee.
Yes.
And I think that either the ripeness or the capacity, or I think that's where it is. Now, we're not trying to exclude them, but that's where we were now.
Okay.
Totally open.
I'm just thinking about the fact that they have hauling franchises, but not
Correct.
landfill franchises, and so they're focused on a different part of the elephant.
Exactly.
And I think that as this discussion progresses, they're going to go, oh, wait, this has a real implication for us. But that they may just not be there yet.
Two things. One, I'll do the second one. Absolutely. In our conversations with some of the elected leaders and some of the staff, I don't know, what are you trying to do? I think that in December, there's going to be a lot of knocking on doors like, oh, this is what you meant. But like, we can do, I'm anticipating that that's going to start happening after the kickoff when materials and these questions are coming out. At the municipality level, the first thing you actually commented on was the haulers. It was a decision by RS and us internally to let's first look at us, the local governments as an entity, and how can we function better, and then go to the private sector.
Yeah.
Every time we went to the private sector, it was about that. That's their job. I mean, their job is to make money and their job is to do what they do.
So their solution.
Exactly. We wanted to come back and say, what's in the best interest of us?
Mhm.
We just had a great conversation about public safety, Jason, but these things. What's best for our community? Well, we're looking at an entire region now. What is in our best interest as counties, as municipalities, as a region moving forward? And there was interesting dialogue on whether the private sector would be a positive voice in that conversation. And so that's where we are now. That was the decision that was made. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but just moving forward, we invited Amy Roth from the recycling. So that's really the only industry so far. But she is also very closely related to RRS. And so they're kind of still on a high level.
Mhm.
So we're not going to dive into a specific.
I think that's appropriate. I mean, those folks are competing anyway. Who would you choose?
Exactly. So thank you for that, because you're hitting all the questions that we've been asking and trying to address. So moving to the agenda, we're working out times, and that's also like the email from DEQ, how much and all that kind of stuff. So we will have welcome and introductions, introductory remarks. Commissioner, I'll be working with you and Commissioner Cameron. Talking points, whatever, just to make sure you're comfortable. This is where we're talking about the background and context.
You have a slide for this, or are you just?
Weird.
Yes.
That was weird. Is it asking me? Oh, weird. Oh, okay, thank you. I've never used this before. It's per open. Oh, okay. Hey, I learn something new every day. Okay, thank you for that. So this was the current agenda as in like this morning. So we have you as commissioners. Okay. background and context, this was my comment about perhaps John Dool, kind of giving, their own perspective. DEQ still working out exactly who will be speaking, but then we'll get into their deliverables by RRS. I'm going to get back to that in the map in about 5-10 minutes. This is another key thing that we wanted to present, and that is success stories, case studies. This is tough because this has never been done before, but it's been done elsewhere. And if we're going to have that conversation, and exactly as you said, Commissioner, people just aren't quite there yet, showing them it can be done. One is in King County. Terry McDonald is from St. Vincent. Just other jurisdictions doing something that we can emulate. So we thought it would be better to have 2 deep dives on like 10 little, just kind of bombarding, it doesn't really stick. So that is where that is. And then Liz gets into, that's our facilitator, Liz Start. And what can we do between now and June 30th? And what questions, work groups, and this will be the meat of everything after lunch. And to see really what could be accomplished and not just talking or making sure we have something. We are really trying to emulate ACTT, case studies, success stories, findings, recommendations, partners, budgetary impacts. We're footing the bill at 400,000. What can other counties do? How can we start to move this forward, especially with the state's assistance? And then closing comments. We spoke with Senator Solomon. She has an event in Roseburg, so she's hoping that she can stop by something in the 2:30 range and maybe provide closing remarks or something like that. CFM is helping us with that.
Yeah, just a real quick comment that, so we met with the senator last week to be able to sort of see, entice her into being an active member of this. I think obviously it's going to be challenging for members to participate because it's going to be right in the middle of a big session as well. And so she mentioned that, but she clearly is the most senior and seasoned individual in the legislature around these particular issues. So I think, she didn't, as Ryan said, she didn't say no.
Right.
And she did, and I think she will commit to being able to speak for us at the end.
Good.
And she's someone that we really need to leverage because she is going to be, over a lot of these particular issues in the session and can be helpful and supportive to us, depending on what directions we go, be it funding, be it policy changes, et cetera. So I think, I felt optimistic about this. We do still have an invite into Senator Patterson as well. She doesn't have as much background as Senator Solomon, but she still would be someone that we would want to bring along with us as well. Don't really have anybody on the House side right now, but Ryan is putting a little bit of time to see if maybe there's someone we can bring along, but nothing at this point.
And this is really when someone like Catherine can help us inroads. Senator Solomon is on the environmental caucus. Just kind of 1-2 punch of, hey, what about this person? Or at least just keeping them up to date. And if this is going to be a 2 or 3 year, well, it is, start that planting those seeds early on. And so this isn't a foreign, or worse yet, it's muddled. Oh, this is about coffee and beauty. Well, it's not about coffee and beauty. It's about something much bigger, making sure that they are constantly educated so that as we move forward, they just have a clearer picture of what we're trying to do. So.
As far as engaging the senators or a representative, I think he'll help to have the initial meeting and instead of, well, this is what we're planning to do, say, this is what we're doing, this is who's showed up, and we need your help to make this a successful effort.
And all those materials are coming back, and Commissioner Weiss, the previous conversation, what's in writing, what can you review? What is the scope and all those things should give a little more clarity of, because this is big. I mean, this is a big topic. How do we make sure it's understandable and digestible enough for the experts to focus on? On the draft agenda that you have in your packet, the bottom is the same. Also looking at our PIO in the back. This really is a call to action. We're getting a ton of no's in every direction right now. This is a solution-based approach. This is not just about Coffin Butte. We're going to get into the map. This is about an entire region based on solid waste management. And the only way out of that is to start looking at materials management, which are not the same. Over and over the interviews we talked to, we can't recycle our way out of this, can't solar panel our way out of climate change, and you can't do the same with this. So how do we change the system so that our solid waste system is much more efficient? So these are kind of the our elevator speech is finally coming together. Our materials are getting tighter. Getting that messaging out is the next phase as we get ready for the 21st. Questions on that? Okay, now we get to the fun part, and I get to see how to redo this. There we go. And share. Cool. Okay, so this is the latest draft. Let me scan up. My screen's a little different. The big deliverable from RRS was to develop a map of all of the landfills, material recovery, transfer stations, everything in the region. We've been talking to them about where that floor is. I mean, they could tack on every Goodwill store or reason. We're figuring out where that line is. But as we scroll into, and this is the one that didn't take it. It was just really fascinating.
We got into a lively discussion about this.
And we hope so, because in the deliverable, we said we wanted this map to be like 80–90% done and use the task force to say, oh, what about this and what about this, and make this more of a living document and to tell the story. That's really the most important part. What is the story? And that's what we're already starting to figure out. Number one, when we talk about right now, Northwest Oregon, we're thinking Lane up to Clouds. I mean, you can kind of, do you see my, oh yeah, okay, which is a little delayed. So Lane North, for the record, we did talk to Deschutes and Wasco as well, but it's a little bit outside of where we're looking at. When we start to say, or it doesn't start, when I say it's not about Coffin Butte, this is the story that we're developing right now. We're putting up, RRS is putting on the labels and making that story and overlays, but really, this is all connected. We see, here's Coffin Butte here. This is intricately tied to Metro because they have a policy in which any landfill that expands, they will not send trash to. It's their way of de-incentivizing expansion. Okay, that's fine. Not sure where they're going to go unless it's out to Arlington. But then we have Marion County, who has their incinerator, which is now slowing down because for legal issues. So they're going to be bringing in. We have Lincoln, Benton, Tillamook, Polk, and us have 100% of our trash goes to Coffin Butte. So when that reaches end of life, going to be interesting questions. Lynn is almost 100. Marion is 2/3, but again, more. So we're, just did the math of it. That's 750,000 people where trash is moving all over this region. And that's just a Coffin Butte. So then we start asking these really interesting questions. As this system is changing, what does that really mean to other jurisdictions? So when we talk to Lincoln and Tillamook, yes, they like their local haulers, and that's great. Generations, you see them in the grocery store, that they're huge pillars of their community. It's no longer going from here to here. It is going from here all the way out to there, out to Gilead. And so what does that do? And that's when we start talking to these counties. You want to plan for when Coffin Butte shuts down? That's tomorrow. I mean, really. And what is the economic impact of these haulers on the west side? How is this system going to play out here? We're not going to have another landfill anywhere except for Lane, which is more of a processing, not just a huge landfill we're just dumping things into. So this is when people hear me say it's not just about Coffin Butte. It's not like I'm being dismissive. It's not. This is a regional 13 county system that needs to be addressed through the lens of material management. Again, only 2% of the environmental impacts are from waste. The other 98% are from the materials. So these are some of the issues that we're talking about.
One of the things that was fascinating to me in looking at this, because So Sean said that very well in terms of, think about this for a minute, if that landfill is not there, what does that mean to you and your community? And material, the blue diamond, or triangle, material recovery, it's interesting if you look sort of in the general area, you see some organic processors, which is good, but I always think about where are there opportunities? Where would, when you start thinking about solutions, so getting into that materials recovery is, you look in Lynn, Benton, Polk, Lincoln, Tillamook, you don't see any blue triangles anywhere in there. So it just makes me wonder is that become sort of, is there opportunities there to press more? Because if you don't have those, then you are going all the way across the state to be able to find landfill, and that's a cost associated with many.
And that cost is, right now, everything's fine. These private haulers in Lincoln and Tillamook, it's because they're not having to go very far. And what we heard over and over, and Bailey was, if he was sitting right here, it'd say, these small businesses are being bought out by the big ones because they just don't have the capacity to be driving 6 hours. And we talk about climate change. Hauling trucks are 2.5 miles to the gallon. I mean, it's their number. It's if you look at DOT, I can be more than happy to share the data. It's the number one emitter of it. So this, I keep calling it a system. It really is. And when you start to look at the cost of having to ship this, not just to Coffin Butte, but all the way out north, way east and north of Portland, all kinds of things start opening up. Is something like Clean Lane, is that applicable all of a sudden in Tillamook and Lincoln? And we have 3 counties come together like Wasco. When you start putting these economic and fiscal constraints on us, on any county that is already constrained, all kinds of questions start opening up. And so that's what we're hoping, that this task force will start to look at these questions and to start looking at this critically, because 2037 is tomorrow.
Yeah, and we can watch the experience of Riverbend and how long it's taken them to wind down and know that Covanta, well, it's not Covanta anymore. The incinerator is starting to wind down, and if Coffin Butte goes into the same trajectory, we've got time, but it's not a lot of time, and those pressures to make decisions are going to happen pretty fast, and the more coordinated we could do it. More likely that we will make good decisions rather than being pressed into something because it's last minute.
Absolutely. And having this conversation, especially with the shoots, where there's not that pressure of, for lack of a better NIMBY, or like they have land that they can build a new landfill. They're not in the same, so we were talking to that Bailey, and like, oh yeah, we're just in the beginning planning stage and we're just making another one. So that pressure is not there. Same thing as Wasco, their horizon is 40 years. The pressure's on us. And so these are some of the questions that we don't normally have an opportunity to talk about when we're talking about just Coffin Butte. So this is when 25 minutes can evaporate in a heartbeat. So sorry about that. I have my policy wonk hat on, and it's these are the lively conversations we have behind the scenes. So
most importantly, all 3 commissioners are invited.
Oh, yes.
And they can come.
Oh, yeah.
I do want to point out one thing, and that is that we've had another event pop up on the radar for that day. Senator Wyden and Rep. Hoyle are probably going to be here for a housing panel that afternoon. Yes, and I got a call from Molly McCarthy yesterday, and they want to highlight our community designated spending investments, the crisis center, behavioral health side of things, 3rd Street Commons, Corvallis Housing First, and I have put in touch with April to be kind of our lead coordinator for our participation. But I wanted to make sure that the 2 of you knew that because having a commissioner there would probably be a good idea. It's probably going to be early afternoon. Maybe
there's a chance to catch part of it or something.
To go to Salem in the morning and they come back for that. So I just wanted to make sure that that was out there.
Thank you.
Air traffic control.
What I appreciate about this process and my image is we have a beach ball sized effort, and Coffin Butte is a quarter. It's part of it, but this is a much broader discussion and needed. Like I said before, I talked to the Tillamook County Commissioner last November, and she had no idea where their waste went. And she's bright and lives there, and wasn't on her radar, and like it is now. And I was the one that suggested maybe because of lack of capacity in Tillamook, can be try to team up with Lincoln County and have one rep from the two counties, or however they could figure that out. But this is exciting because it's a more accurate approach to the problem.
Yeah.
It's not just Benton County and we have the facility and take care of it kind of a deal. It's, this, if we're lucky, the lifespan is into the late 30s. Covanta and Riverbend, and that's a lot, and their alternative is coming here.
Real quick, all sites from Lincoln will be the Bailey Forest, so we do have representation from Lincoln, so we do have on the coast. Second, that is a very common theme. I just put my trash up at my driveway and have a nice day. Superman picks it up and puts it in the sun, and that's it. Until it isn't, until the issue. And then, for instance, we're sitting here talking about a jail. We don't have a transfer station. You don't see anything here because our transfer station is Coffin Butte. Those are 30 to 50 million bucks. So, that's going to be the taxpayer. That's going to have to be coming. Where's it going? That's why you're going to be hearing in a few weeks the intermodal from Bailey. Bailey's working. We've been working with a couple of people. How could that work? And so these are big numbers that we're talking. I think I interrupted you. I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Well, I was wondering, are transfer stations always the responsibility of the hosting jurisdiction and not of the hauler?
I don't know. I'll have to ask Bailey on that one.
Yeah, but I do know that Polk is acquired land and
Yes.
is building a transfer station.
Yes.
Because they're anticipating these issues.
And those are the conversations that we need more of. They need to have more of those, like, oh, this is coming. Because it's going to be 5 or 6 years just to build it. It's nothing like you just snap a finger and there's a transfer station. I mean, that alone is a 3 to 5
Talk about NIMBY.
And is it the county's responsibility to build a transfer station, working with small municipalities also build?
Correct. I will ask Bailey on who. It has to be some, private, and whoever the local jurisdiction is. I will ask that.
Well, one of the things I just wanted to mention, obviously, is as we start to formulate what are the specific things that we should take on. What comes out of these, what are the key strategies? I do believe, though, one of the most important things is the outreach piece and the outreach and education. And I think earlier Sean had the elevator speech, as he called it, up in front. And I think this is where Benton County, I think, has the opportunity. You guys are well informed on this particular issue. It's been right at your front doorstep. And I think to the extent that you're working with your colleagues in these other counties, because I think we've clearly found a lot of it sort of out of sight, out of mind. And when you start to think about it from the perspective is that, okay, you can look at it that way, but eventually it's going to cost you money if we don't start to get ahead of this.
Yes.
So I think this is where, and I know we're going to be going to AOC in November, but I think the more the three of you and probably Commissioner Cameron and anybody else that begins to kind of get on this can communicate and make particularly these counties in that regional area understand. I mean, just look at the map. That has a conversation in itself, and being able to just depict what Bailey said, or excuse me, what Sean had brought up earlier. I think that's going to be a important effort as well, because there's a lot of folks that just just tell me where to go dump my garbage.
And Commissioner Mullen, you and I were talking months ago about, you know, especially in rural areas, there is things worse than the landfill. I mean, there's just, and I got that from Maryland. I mean, like, if the rates are too high, they go in a stream. And that's just
Yep.
where your tires go. And if the rates go too high and don't want to take it to, or you can't get it to Copper somewhere, they will just dump it in a river and they will dump it on the ground. And before, my best friend just got 3 acres out in Port Orford and there's just nothing but tires in the backyard. I mean, it's just everywhere. So this is another issue of how do the transport stations come in? What are the price points, the intermodal, all of these solutions are not going to be cheap, but they, as we know with Jason, the longer you wait, the more expensive it's going to get. So this is how 45 minutes evaporates. So I apologize for getting too wonky, but these decisions are coming. Any other questions? Okay, you'll be getting emails and invites and all the material from either Lindsay or on behalf of Rick or something like that. And we'll be.
Probably come through my calendar invite, but just real quickly, commissioners, I just wanted to, I've said this before, but I just want to recognize Sean in this. I mean, because he's been working his tail off all summer long, him and Bailey both, in terms of making contacts and trying to organize all this. And we've been all kind of trying to wrap around and help Sean and support it from a project team standpoint. But I just want to really recognize him and the effort he's put in. It was sort of a quick pivot that needed to be made back in May and June. And I think we had to, sometimes you say you have to kind of slow down to go fast. And that's what we did. And I'm feeling really good about this coming together. You're always nervous. But it feels like there is some real substance behind it now and some real data and information. I'm excited to see what comes out of RSS. But again, just wanted to take a moment to recognize the work he's put into it because it hasn't been easy.
And work with Bailey has just been awesome. And so, and having this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a question about.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. And thank you, thanks as well,
Yeah.
on that file.
Uh-huh.
Regarding the public meet or the meeting, is it going to be a public?
It is not technically, we are gonna have, if people want, we're gonna have like a webinar.
Okay.
Some one of the case studies is gonna be from King County and the DEQ staff have to go, will have to present online. It'll be a webinar of people and it will be recorded. And yes.
And then we'll like post it to the website.
Yes,
That's
absolutely, Commissioner. Yeah, working with Maura, she doesn't know this yet on the owls. This is happening so fast. We were just talking yesterday. But yes, it will be a sign up for a webinar kind of thing where you can listen in and very few people will have the opportunity to present. Just
And then
because.
going forward, Commissioner, we will treat it just a regular public meeting once we get into sort of the task force routine. But this one, we really wanted to make sure we handle this.
Yeah, and it's way more informational.
Yeah.
All of the maps and all these things, bringing everyone up to speed. Once those work groups hit, it's going to be much more technical and back and forth conversation.
And no, just in general, as we transfer into a new administration, we will probably want a commissioner assigned to SMMP
Yeah,
on a regular basis as part of their.
and that was a
long
conversation,
portfolio.
yes, yeah. Whichever is going to be that.
Yep.
person.
Yep, that's to be decided once the new commissioner's on board.
Mhm.
One question, what's the location in Salem?
The Commons.
Broadway
I said
Commons.
Broadway Commons.
It's just right outside of downtown Salem, like if you're going towards Kaiser.
Okay.
If you're familiar with that, I believe that is, gosh, I live there, I don't even know.
In my calendar.
It will be
It's in
your
my calendar too.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, the address, the
Okay,
links,
awesome.
all of that will be.
Very nice building.
Yeah.
They host a lot of
I
government.
think I've been there once. Yeah, and then the meetings thereafter, the location is to be determined, or they may, maybe virtual.
Yeah, I am assuming in Salem, since we're gonna have, so like Paul said, coming from Newport. People come from, if we're gonna get people from Portland and Eugene and all these. It
It's more
should be.
central. It's the most central, I guess.
That's what we're assuming. Now, if there's something in Eugene and like all six experts are in Eugene, well, yeah,
Or
we'll go there.
Albany, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll
So if it's
see that.
central, it's more or less as we were
Yeah.
talking, just. so
That would be
people
the
have it.
idea, is the reason we put a little budget that way so that we can keep this as, we want it to be inclusive and everybody attend it in person as much as possible.
And it was great. We do have stipends. So if people, again, coming from Newport, that's a 2.5 hour drive if they want to stay Sunday night or just other ways, especially for our nonprofits that we have, again, helping them out because, they have expenditures. So we do have funding in your budget to provide for that as well, which we're getting a positive response to.
That's
Just, yeah.
You didn't mention the nonprofit participants, so.
I did. You're right. It was the experts. So like we have Brain Recycling, which is I think in Eugene, St. Vincent's. We do have one from University of Oregon. I think she is on a board on textiles and EPR, and so just trying to make sure that we get OSU has, but it's more specific. And again, once we get into what the questions are, we'll start pulling it from academia. Recycling Partnership, that's Dan Leaf. Heart of Cardam is a nonprofit in Manzanita, which is a reuse center. So yes, I just didn't dive into, but yes, we do have tons of nonprofits.
I do want to put a plug in for Terry McDonald from St. Vincent. He is considered one of the very innovative people in this particular arena. I worked more in the housing field, which he was terrific there as well, but he'll be great.
He's on board, and Bailey and I meet with him on Thursday just to get to the similar to scale is. So yeah, the names are really high up there, and I've been hearing from all the others in our interviews, so I'm excited.
And having the facilitator from RSS, I'm glad that we added that. That wasn't initially part of it, but we really needed somebody to organize all this. And plus they have so many contacts.
Right.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Excited about it.
Yeah, you too.
Moving on, we have county administrator or administration updates in order to include. Rick,
Hi.
if he wants it.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Some recent county activities of note, of the continuation of the CFO search, which many of you will be involved with tomorrow. As you know, this is a key hire. We have 2 candidates. You will have your own, I believe there's a packet that was sent out
Yes.
with some questions
Yeah.
yesterday that our recruiter and Rick and myself and a couple others, we put some questions together, and Tracy for you to review. Of course, you can ask your own questions as well. So we're pretty excited about this, and I think it will really help us a lot as we want to build a strategic plan, an organizational plan for the future. Having that CFO in place is going to be really, really key to our organization. I attended the AOC District 5 meeting, met with Christopher Jacobs, along with Rick and Paul Bellotta with the county. We really want to move forward, and we're getting very close to having Christopher work over in community development one day a week with us, just because it is a shared services model. And I think
Great.
it will, just having us all in the same building once a week is kind of a good way.
We're currently targeting Fridays, but we'll get you a confirmation on that.
Super.
And Christopher's a planner background as well, and I think that's a great space for him. And for our team up there, as well as just having access. We met with Christopher Dale, and the Shauna Johnson and other ones. We're continuing to work through payroll issues with the sheriff's office. This is really part of just building more of a relationship with all of our unions and trying to work towards some issues that we will probably be addressing in an audit, that we have engaged an outside contractor who's on contract with us to kind of look at some of these systemic issues that are really specifically embedded in the sheriff's office, but doing it countywide, I think, is best practice. That will begin shortly. I don't have a date for you at this moment, but again, we still meet monthly. We met with Dan Crowell about the continuation of the Benton County podcast. Some community engagement work in the community. I met with Ryan Voigt, I attended and volunteered at the fall. I did not volunteer at the Fall Festival. I apologize. I should have on Saturday and Sunday. I just hung out with some friends, coworkers at the booth, but I will say I did not man the table. I had dinner with the Eklunds. As you know, they were very involved and they're very, very involved in the community. We discussed a lot of issues, but it was actually a really, really nice dinner at their home, which I appreciated that. I attended the Neighborhood Association meeting at CPN, which is in Corvallis. We, again, just talked about general issues, just getting more and more active in the community. And I met with Charlie Mitchell. Many of you know him as the Economic Community Development Director for the city of Dallas, Oregon. He lives here in Benton County and really, really has been an engaged member. So building that relationship. As you know, I was gone for almost a week at the ICMA conference. It was the first time I attended the ICMA conference. It was something that Human Resources had recommended to work on a management certificate. So I've been taking online courses to become a certified manager. It is something that Joe Kirby had brought as a certification in his work. It's a huge, huge conference in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. There were over 3,000 attendees. It kind of gets up to the attendance of the NCA meeting that we all attend in DC, which is pretty huge as well. And I also attended the NACA meeting, and a lot of the folks I networked with were in the western portion of this county. Philomath was represented, Albany was represented, and Adair Village logged into a lot of the virtual pieces. So we had a lot of city representation at the conference, which was terrific. Some upcoming activities, we talked about the SMMP. We have the Benton County Volunteer Appreciation Dinner. I believe it's on all your calendars. If it's not, I'll get Mariah to send it to you as well. Looking forward to the tour of the Crisis Center, along with the commissioners and our health department. I want to remind everybody, Election Day is November 5th. I plan to probably work out of the Board of Elections that day to support that team. Veterans Day is November 11th, and all offices will be closed on that day. Additionally, we've had some meetings, and I just ask for your flexibility this month. If you see some big blocks on my calendar, those are days that we are hoping to continue to work with the union to settle our contract with ASME. When and if I have to cancel a meeting, it is my primary responsibility. I think most of you support me going into those negotiations. That's what I have. Did I miss something, Rick?
No, just.
Would you like to tell us?
No, just a couple of things to add. Just because I know you're all interested in the continuing movement of the courthouse, I updated you last week that we were still working with our friends at SHPO and the Army Corps. I'm happy to say that we did reach agreement yesterday in terms of the conditions. Now we just have to get it signed. Obviously it's got to be routed through, but I just want to let you know that we finally have gotten to the point of agreement on how to address that. So that shouldn't hold things up. And then just a couple of things to add from Rachel's report on the CFO. We also have on the street right now, the Deflection Program Coordinator went out, and then by the end of this week, the Community Development Director posting will be out as well. And then finally, we will be in front of you at the next goal setting to talk to you about the health reorganization component as the follow back from June, and be able to present to you what the current planning has, but we're also in the process of doing communication and working with and getting feedback in terms of engagement with our staff. So more to come on that. So just real quickly, those things.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to go next?
Got things I can talk about.
Sure.
My family and I attended the Kings Valley History Day meeting, and I think I saw Commissioner Malone there as well. It's the Historic Resources Commission and our data department put just a huge amount of effort into that event, as they do every year. And this was the first time that I was actually able to attend and didn't have any other scheduling issues, and I felt extra motivated because I am the liaison to HRC. It was really cool. There was a lot of good demonstrations, and my favorite part was being able to actually go inside of the historic houses,
Mhm.
the Commander's House and the Franz Dunn House, which I've never actually been able to go inside before. And then learn a lot from, I'm blanking on his name, he's on our Parks Board. Anyway, lots of good information.
Or the conditions of the houses.
They need work, yeah, but it's solid.
Mhm.
So, yeah, happy to hear that maybe they have some ideas about interpretive centers or, you
Yeah.
know, a building needs a use, as they like to say, so.
Yeah.
Getting those to the point where they can be accepted and used, good. I also attended the Southtown under construction sort of public event. Commissioner Oger was also there. It was great to hear some information about, the affordable housing that's going in, with Denver Northwest and some partnerships. In Southtown, some great work there. I haven't been following it quite as closely since I'm not a city councilor anymore, so it's great to see some of your faces and hear about all the progress they've made. As you all know, I'm the chair of the Local Officials Advisory Committee. We just got an update yesterday on the Oregon Housing Needs Assessment rulemaking, which was very interesting and a lot of information, which I'm still processing, but, I feel okay about it. I feel good about it. You know, it's always hard when legislature or the governor or somebody's got a mandate on us. It takes up time and bandwidth from other projects. But I do appreciate that there is some flexibility and more than 100 different strategies that, you know, examples, that cities and counties can use, for most of the cities, I guess, but. Anyway, so, good information there. I'm going to be participating in Leadership Corvallis's welcome Q&A session from the city and county. I believe Mark Shepherd is going to be the representative from the city. And so that's like an hour and a half in the morning on one of these days, Thursday maybe. So that'll be interesting, seeing what questions that people bring up. We may have talked about this a little bit. The Corvallis Chamber of Commerce is engaging in a new president/CEO search. I am on that committee now, but they've had 2 meetings, one of which started at 9 AM today. So both meetings I've had scheduling conflicts. So I hope that at some point I'll be able to participate in a meaningful way, just depends on schedules. The Farm Bureau annual meeting is Thursday night. The commissioners get invited.
Yeah,
Not I.
You want me to, I can email
No,
her.
that's okay.
So I'm planning on attending that.
Good.
Last year, my kid had like some emergency or something. I think I went to the ER instead of going to that. So I'm looking forward to drama-free Thursday night and going to that. And I think that's all I have.
Okay.
all right. I don't think we've mentioned this, September 11th, had a nice chat with Senator Gilser Lewin. And I think that's a great relationship to keep track of, and she has her agenda, and I think part of our job is to maybe broaden that out a little bit and say, well, projects we need help with, whether it's some funding issue or the SMMP effort that she's aware of, all that's going on. Next day at 12, the Chamber of Commerce had a after hours get together. And the main reason I went is,
Oh, Caesar the No Drama Llama.
Okay.
yeah,
Mhm.
so
For the record, please note that Commissioner Malone is showing a picture
I'm David Caesar.
on his phone, and it is his screensaver.
it's Oh, I saw Cesar the first time at the celebration of the remodel grand opening of our health clinic on 27th and middle of the day in the lobby. There's people for the grand opening. There's regular clients. It was crowded, and there's Cesar in the middle of the lobby, just very calmly, all this chaos around him. My favorite image of that lobby is there was a 10-year-old boy kind of petting him robustly. And on the other side, if you remember Lilia, so Cesar did not move his feet, but he turned his head towards Lilia and away from the 10-year-old boy. So anyway, that was.
Leah was actually there.
No, I'm saying at the.
The first time around,
Oh.
years ago,
Okay,
when the
sorry.
clinic
At the
opened.
clinic lobby,
Okay.
chaos, and Cesar can go to hospitals. He doesn't poop till he gets outside. Which
Pretty impressive for.
yeah,
He's well trained.
and just well, training's part of it. I forget the owner's name, but he said, no, he came that way, just calm. And so he's retired HP guy and turns down more days than he does with Cesar. But if you ever have a chance to see him, take advantage of that. The next week, the AOC had 2.5 days of meetings in Salem, board of directors meeting on Friday, and then a legislative meeting on Saturday, and a wonderful dinner Friday night at a winery I'd never heard of, just north of Salem, and really expensive building. Looks like they are set up for all kinds of events. Monday, the 23rd, morning meeting that Rick and Commissioner Wise and I were at LC, and it was not Business Oregon, what are they calling themselves these days? Regional Solutions, Courtney Flathers. I think I helped organize it, but had something come up and she was not able to attend, but there was somebody from ODOT and Regional Solutions, couple folks, and trying to Patrick from
LCDC.
yeah, Wingard, who sounded sympathetic to some of the zoning challenges that LC has, where it's zoned for building. It's not really practical because there starts out a little flat piece right by the river and then goes up the hill. And so I think getting him involved will get some movement on that. And our community development folks were there also. Well, Roseanne, I'll let you talk about the CSE meeting. following Monday, a week ago, I went to Alsea for their grand opening of their CTE facility. They passed a bond measure in 2021, and there were challenges. There wasn't enough money for several reasons, to build what the original plan, but I think they scaled it down so that they have a wonderful facility, and it really makes sense for LC. It used to be, you can get maybe partway through high school or all the way through high school and then go work in the woods and do fairly well. And that business model is not what it used to be. So getting some people that are good with their hands that we need to keep things running, and I think very appropriate for LC. And the next morning I got up early and went to the Cardva annual breakfast, and it was a great event. Maybe not as well attended as it used to be. It was in the CH2M large ballroom, and maybe, let's just say they didn't fill it up, but I think there's a new executive director, and
She's leaving.
she's leaving. So,
I'm looking for a job.
okay. Late breaking news from last week. Okay. I think we probably all had a call with a VP from OSU, kind of trying to give us a heads up on what's going on campus and how they're concerned about the Palestinian support folks and what they may be up to this fall. And I'm a big fan of any kind of cooperation with OSU. They're a big part of our community, and in our contact is sometimes hit and miss. And so I appreciated her reaching out so we could, it was a broader discussion than just the original topic. And I'll give a little further update on Fort Hoskins, and Jesse Ott did a great job of organizing. And I think maybe because there was a football game that afternoon and attendance wasn't as good as it could be, but David Bronner was there and gave a nice talk of the history of his efforts there, his 40 plus years for the first couple decades, very quietly excavating and identifying where the buildings that have been melted into the ground, or the Sheridan House that Nancy was talking about was built there and then moved to PD, and the PD folks knew the history, but it was kind of tenuous that it still existed. And 10 years ago, on a early Sunday morning, they moved it from PD back to Fort Hoskins. And some of the fun discussion, the person that was in the Sheridan House, Phil, from the parks. Long time.
Yes, Phil Hayes?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And another good source of information, and we had a nice chat about, well, 130 years ago, how did they move it from Hoskins to PD and without, there was something about, well, the nails were still where they should be and so did they take it apart or how did they get it there?
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
he dispelled the notion of floating it down the river. But anyway, so I think that's, I guess it's the last Saturday and that's what I had.
Okay. Well, I also enjoyed the AOC legislative retreat. I only attended one day of that meeting. Just for the legislative updates and discussions, and particularly because there was a roundtable discussion of deflection programs.
Oh, I appreciated you being able to be there.
Yeah, thank you. So I jumped on virtually that weekend. And it was interesting to hear where other counties were, because so many of them are already in implementation. We were among the minority that were waiting to implement until we had more of our Ts crossed and Is dotted.
What's our schedule?
Want to launch in January, but I'm looking to Rick because there's a small group meeting now that is going to nail down some final details so that we don't have circular discussions that had started to happen. Yeah, but as far as I know, we're still looking at January for a deflection program.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And I would say January 1st in terms of full implementation, although depending on, of course, coordinator in place, we could always do like one of those soft starts that we
Yes.
talked about where we're actually doing it, but just trialing it. So that would be my hope, but it'll also be dependent on staff.
Yeah, and I guess one of my questions in that regard has been, what are we doing now? The law has changed and we don't have a deflection program in place.
Yeah, so is the sheriff still on?
No.
So I talked to the sheriff recently about this and currently, so I can say this right. They're categorized as arrest, but it's citation in lieu of custody is what they're doing on those. And what he did give me a report on is since the law change, we've had 19 of those in the month of September, of which we believe 3 of them would have been eligible for our current criteria. So that'll be a conversation that we have about trying to finalize our criteria. I mean, I think initially, like we said, we want to try to start small so that we know that we have an effective program, but I would guess that there's probably room for growth.
Yeah.
In that area. And Zan, I know you've been part of those conversations, but as of right now, that's what he's reported to me is a citation in lieu of custody, but it's shown as an arrest.
Okay, that's helpful to know. And I think it's useful to be collecting that kind of data before we actually go live.
Yeah, so I'm going to share that out. Sheriff's been giving it to me and I've been providing health updates just so that we can get an idea of what our volume would be.
Yep.
And you remember, Zan, that pretty much aligns with John Harrelson's initial estimate of approximately 50 to 60 per year.
Yeah.
Eligible. But then, of course, they have to actually
Be willing to engage.
be willing to engage.
Yep. Super, thank you.
But
I also had quite belatedly, my conversation with Senator Gelser and updated her on a whole suite of things. And included in that number was a description of the work by the Oregon Cascades West Council of Governments and Community Services Consortium to continue their progression towards a more united organization. And she was not aware of that, and she was very excited to hear about that. But the other items were things I think that my fellow commissioners have probably also touched upon. I touched upon the status of the deflection program and the Sustainable Materials Management Plan launch. I think that it will be important to make sure that our representative and senator get invitations or at least notified about the event so that they can attend virtually or be there if they want to, just because it's courtesy. So. I also attended the Deb Northwest celebration for their land trust housing that's beginning down in South Corvallis. They've owned that parcel of land for probably about, well, I know it's been since Willamette Neighborhood Housing Services owned that land. I think they've owned it for a good 10, 12 years. And it's taken a very long time to pull funding together to actually be able to start building low-income housing on that site. So the land trust houses there are single-family homes that are going right now. The next phase of the development will be land trust townhouses. And they anticipate that there might be 3 different phases of that land trust townhouse funding. They are starting to think more about the parcel along Highway 99 as well. It's in the urban renewal district and what that might look like. And so that's exciting also. And more to come on that. The near term is that they're negotiating with a group of folks that won one of the Food Hub Awards, Las Doñas del Sur, to talk about potential food cart port on that site, which is a good way to test the commercial viability of that site in the short term without a lot of infrastructure. So exciting. And I know that Christopher Jacobs is very engaged in that process. I attended a Samaritan all boards retreat. And I knew they had a lot of boards, but they have 2 boards for each hospital. One a hospital board and then a foundation board. So that's 10 boards. And then on top of that, they have the IHN CCO board that I sit on. And they have a health plans board for their other health plans line of business. And so I cannot imagine that they get any work done other than tending to all those boards. But it was an interesting meeting and it focused primarily on the cost crunch that's occurring across the hospitals and the cutbacks that they're having to put into place. As you all know, you heard that they let go about 80 middle management folks because of that. And there was kind of a look ahead as well. And I'm real interested in what the implications are for CCO. And that will be covered in the next CCO board meeting. And we have a coordinated care organization board retreat along with the Citizens Advisory Committee for the board later this month. So I will know more about how that might affect all of the healthcare for the folks that we also tend to in the most vulnerable component of our population. Went to the Corvallis Business Park open house, which was an event that was promoted in the chamber newsletter. The Corvallis Business Park is a collection of buildings that I never would have found at the time on there. It's tucked on Buchanan, but that corner of Buchanan and Fifth, and it's about 5 different buildings that have had different manufacturing plants in them and offices and one thing and another. And the owners of those buildings have decided to make it kind of a shared workspace. So they have 2 buildings where they're renting offices, and they range from like 100 square feet to several hundred square feet in size. They're modestly priced. And I discovered that Corvallis Housing First is there now, since they have moved out of the motel down in Third, along with a lot of other small businesses. So that was interesting. And other than that, I've been working on a couple of different projects, those bylaws for the Willamette Criminal Justice Council, and continuing to communicate with Nick Wallace and talk about rural transportation for folks that are in his type of situation, that are distant from Corvallis and hard to serve. And I have muted optimism that we are going to be able to do anything, but still been working with Rick and with Gary and with folks to see whether or not there's potential for, in the long term, for a new grant to serve rural folks, because our LC constituents are in the same sort of situation where they need service, and maybe there's some sort of a fixed route shuttle that can address partially the need. It's a tough situation. Upcoming events, there's Broadband Summit on November 7th. I know you both went to that last year out at Knife River. I might go this year. The grand opening for the Benton Community Foundation Leadership and Learning Center is on October 10th. Everyone is welcome. That's in the evening. Pathfinder Clubhouse, for folks with uh, a clubhouse for folks that have a mental health diagnosis they're having their first fundraiser on October 12th. And that should be fun. I will probably be out of town all day on October 30th for a site visit down in Josephine County for the Youth Development Council. And I will be out of town, or out of pocket on October 10th for a Benton Community Foundation Board retreat, but otherwise here. That's it. The hospital, I know that IHN CCO is looking for who it's up to them. They'll choose the next board commissioner to serve on their board. I don't know whether they've spoken to either of you yet, but yeah, that's another position that will be up with the new year.
What's
but
the time?
not up to us.
What is the time commitment?
We have board meetings about once a month, but not every month, so I'd probably say 8 to 10 a year. And there's a board retreat annually. I sit on a couple of other committees as an IHN CCO board member. So it as much as or as little as you want, but I'm on their audit committee, for instance. So that also meets every other month or so. Yeah, I would say it's probably a good 20 hours a year.
Okay. It's good for them to know as.
Yeah.
The distribution of,
But it's a daytime meeting.
okay.
All of their meetings are daytime meetings with hybrid options.
I have a couple follow-ups. This Saturday, I'm gonna be at Timbertown Coffee in Philomath with Christopher McMorrin. Kind of
Candidate.
no, more of a town hall.
Mhm.
I think he's invited a couple school board members, so I'm not sure
Mhm.
who all's gonna show up.
Mhm.
It may be just electeds and if there's half a dozen of us, we'll have a good conversation. I think some local folks will drop by, but you never know. And I think the school board did something like this in the spring and modestly attended. And Sandy mentioned the Community Foundation grand opening. One interesting thing about their new office is that the actual office part is a small part of the space. They've designed it so a good part of the space is dedicated to a community meeting room. And that's an interesting use of their space and shows their dedication to the mission and that, just an interesting development.
It was really, and the intent is to support area nonprofits. So Leadership and Learning Center is designed for hosting trainings of all kinds that support the work and the capacity building for all of our local nonprofit organizations. But the other is really for community learning and facilitation about key community issues in order to bring together, say, nonprofit leaders and local government folks and others. If we're talking about housing, or if we're talking about other kinds of economic development issues, for instance. So I think that we'll see how that space gets used, but it does have constraints on it. It's not just a meeting room that's open to anyone for any purpose. So those guidelines have just been hammered out.
And at the CTE grand opening, Chris Quokka was there and had a nice chat with him and got to talk. Yes. Maps.
I know.
Um,
Wanted.
and you mentioned to him the Jackson Frazier, boardwalk project. And, just kind of in passing and he lit up and, oh yeah, and knew about, mentioned Frana and their fundraising efforts from several years ago. And so you never know where conversations will lead, but I'm gonna take him one or two of these maps. So the boardwalk is at the bottom right. And that's what I appreciate about the map is that it shows the context at the very bottom, shows all the housing that's right next to the wetlands. And then the Greenbelt Land Trust led effort for overpass, so connecting overpass over 99W to connect our wetlands with Owens Farm and rails, extensive rail system to the west. So the fundraising, I mean, they've raised $1.5 million, and 2 or 3 years ago, okay, got it ready, and then with design and complications, and we need something in the neighborhood of 2.8 million to complete the boardwalk project. So apparently the $1.5 million is solid with grants that don't have expiration dates, or the dates are far enough out. This project can plug along and figure out how to get another funding partner to. But reason for the map is just to show it's not just the boardwalk is a standalone project. Is to show how that connects with the surrounding area.
I really appreciate this, Matt. Thank you.
You can have that one. You can't have the laminated. one.
Thank you.
I can use it as a placemat.
Yep.
and lunch on it. But,
Keep your office clean.
yeah. But just the partners and the fun one for me is Samaritan Hospital has 60 acres north of their existing campus, and they need a relatively small part of that for parking and offices. But they're interested in the trail system and having patients and/or visitors be able to get outside the hospital and walk around a little bit in the woods and as part of the healing process. And I know I've been in the hospital a time or two and longingly looked out the little window to the woods and wished I was out there. And Benton County Health is a partner in this, specifically the Owens Farm project. That I really appreciate the partnerships that have been developed for getting outside and moving around.
Yep. Just have to continue to fundraise for it and see where we can go.
Well, and
For our part of the vision.
part of the point of doing stuff is this casual conversations, and you never know
Yep.
where you might find a interested party.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, if there are no other updates,
Just a quick little piece of very current local economic news, just got the TLT report and receipts up 27% from last year. So that tells you that more tourism, more activity this last quarter. So just,
wow,
it's a good economic news.
yeah,
So that's June, through September. Or,
It's essentially
July.
considered quarter two. So that was actually
last spring.
April through June
June.
30th. Yeah.
That's good. So that's
Yeah.
graduation season and
Yeah, which our biggest time is usually this next quarter.
Right.
It's coming up football season and you see a lot. So
well, on other economic news, I know that I had heard, and I don't know any more about the fact that the mill site in Philomath was acquired and is going to be part of a mass timber
Yep.
company's operations. So that's very exciting too. It didn't stay vacant very long. I was very grateful to see that was happening.
yeah.
Okay. And then we will now recess our regular session. And we will take a break. And then we will come back and enter into executive session under ORS 192.602D regarding labor.
No, not labor.